should always announce if I was going to try and point you to something that could be of real interest and value, or should I just let it slide and then wait until much later and I get notes from people? Which? Okay. Since I still only have half the tape on these alternate nights, I'll start off with the big stuff. In a sense, it's real simple, real direct. It's flawed, it's lacking, but it's a place that you can get your finger in. This kind of finger. That life is set up, as always, apparently a binary situation that's not even normally recognized, but I can point it out fairly easily. If you do not get misled and buffaloed by the fact of going immediately, oh yeah, well, you could look at it that way, yeah. And then that's it. Because if that's it, then the rest of it's a waste of time. This is, in the classification also, I can see a slight family resemblance between what I was about to say and you remember what I was talking about a few weeks back about life has a first story for everything. I can see this as being a distant relative. And I'm going to take the term from that wonderful intellectual sporting activity of boxing. It's life's 1-2 punch. And here, and I could use this in other ways, but here is the example of what I was going to try and either slip up on you tonight or go ahead and announce that, hey, write down important, underline it, and then take the following notes. So, since I can't decide which to do, you decide. It's this. Since everyone still has a great interest, God knows why, but in problems. And that's not a joke, and that's not really an attack on any of you people, because were it not for the seeming problem of problems, none of you would be here. So I can keep making fun of problems and always emphasizing it and putting quotation marks and laughing at it to the point that you refuse to say problems, you start calling it oatmeal. We can do that. I can say, I do not want anybody to ever even say the word problem again. And you can go, okay. You just name it something else. But you still, down in your heart, you know it's my problems. So we won't take such a childish avenue, not quite yet. Don't discount the future possibility. But, so we'll go ahead and talk about it on the basis of problems. But now here's the point. Has any of you ever noticed that I historically start off and get you to laugh? Has anybody ever thought about that? It does something to the brain chemistry. It does something also not to let people laugh, to do it real seriously. And some of you that's been around here a while longer, you know at one time I did it that way. Is that all right? But now we're back to laughing time. Does it matter? Huh? Is that it? Here it is, problems. Now, I'm not playing with words. As I said, you can get tricked by this and such as this when I describe things in this manner, that you'll see, yeah. And your own inner voices, your own partnership can say, well, yeah, that's one thing I can't argue about. That's not weird. I never thought about it that way. But you could look at it that way. So what? Or you keep waiting, well, let's press on. And there's enough there that we don't have to press on. So don't think, just because I describe it and you're able to see immediately what I'm talking about, that, oh, yeah, okay, that's it. Problems. Human beings compared to any other creature of which you can be aware. human beings apparently have two sources of problems, two possible sources. That is from the lower circuits and from the upper circuits. And that's it. But the lower circuits, if we were back to this kind of ad hoc diagram, and considering the lower circuitry, the gut level, and the upper circuitry. This the old, nonverbal, apparent door to the past, and this the younger, verbal, meaning more, but what ordinary people refer to as the intellect, but much more than that, and them all being interconnected, circuits, circuitry. But still, for the sake of describing and pointing what I'm trying to point toward tonight, you could look and see that all problems can be traced, can be laid at the door of, can be seen to either be based on older lower circuit needs, motivations, drives, whatever, we won't call them for the second, and younger, always verbal, even if it's silently in your own head, upper circuit sources. The lower circuit problems and needs can treat themselves. If you live, if you survive, they do treat themselves. Such as, and we're talking now of the great middle class. The middle of the bell curve, we're not talking about people out on the fringes. For instance, when you are hungry, the lower circuits, and they will drag you and Toto along with them, will treat themselves. And I'm using now the word treat in the first definition. I don't mean treat themselves to a half gallon of Rocky Road ice cream necessarily. It is that they will treat their problems. You do not have to have the upper circuits talk to the lower circuits. You do not ever have to tell yourself, I am hungry. You do not have to sit down and look at a picture book full of food to try and work yourself up into an eating frenzy, the way that some people apparently sexually have to use pornography. You do not have to get a book, a cookbook, and look at pictures to get, food-wise, to get horny. If you're hungry, you're hungry. You do not need to talk yourself into it. You do not need to think about it. There is no need to talk about it. But, above all right now, hunger, that is a lower circuit problem, will treat itself. Do you realize that there is no such parallel, there is no such reflective condition in the upper circuitry? Think about it. Now, I said hunger. I can wrap it up real quick in case you can't figure out the rest. If you are thirsty, you do not have to go and look at semi-erotic pictures of water to try to work yourself up to the point that you think, all right, I give in, I'll go ahead and drink some water before I pass out from dehydration. If you are sleepy, you do not have to look at pictures of people sleeping. And perhaps last, if certainly not least, I guess, sex. All of the needs, I'm not going to play around and make any more jokes, it is the needs to keep the organism alive at the bare minimum. To keep the organism of man, the animal of man, alive. That is the lower circuitry in my division, my artificial, arbitrary division of speaking about it in this way, although there is validity to it. They will treat themselves. That is the problems. Now, I didn't say cure themselves, because I've used cure and treat in a different way in the past, and I was trying not to confuse you any more than maybe some of you are. But do you see, in a sense, it cures itself? That is, if you're hungry and you're sane at all, just by a middle-class definition, you will go eat. And if you're fairly sane at all, you'll go eat just more or less enough that you're no longer hungry. And you'll more or less eat, if you're fairly sane, just in the middle-class city sense of the term, you'll be driven to eat a fairly balanced diet. Or if you're lacking something, you'll suddenly have a great craving for yellow vegetables. And you don't know why, but you go eat them. You'll go eat 2.5 gallons of squash ice cream. And so I was going to, not to play around with words, but almost in a very isolated sense, the lower circuit problems cure themselves. I didn't want to say cure because, as I said in the past, I've used that to designate something that would be once and for all fixed. But of course you get hungry again the next day, or 2 hours later. But the thing is, within the confines right then, do you understand, if the lower circuits were left to themselves, you didn't have this going on. When the lower circuits were hungry, they would eat. And they would eat the right amount, more or less, and I'm not getting into any kind of nutritional game here because it's not all that important. Remember, what you eat are you, not the other way around. But you would more or less eat what you needed, the amount you needed, and that's it. If you were thirsty, the same thing. If you were cold, if you were too hot, if you were horny, if you were sleepy. What it took to keep the lower circuits going if they operated in isolation, if it was only them at home and you, they would do that. So they would continually treat themselves within that small context that I'm talking about. They would in a sense cure themselves. When they were hungry, they'd eat. When they were tired, they'd sleep. When they were thirsty, they would drink. When they were horny, they would, you know what. And that would be it. But now let's look at the upper circuits. Of all the things that man's intellect has been called, the mind referred to in many ways, one of them, man, I see sociological, anthropological, other ways, man is referred to specifically as being an animal with a brain, with an intellect. And then I hear the intellect referred to in man, and even man itself, as the problem solver. Well, you've heard that. That's in common literature, that they refer to man, not only the mammal with an opposable thumb, or bifocal vision, but they were oftentimes referred to man, the problem solver. Is unique to other animals, those that seem the closest to man physiologically. Can't solve problems. If you put food in the jar, monkeys can't figure how to get it out, more or less. But that man is the problem solver. And what makes him the problem solver? The upper circuits. But here's the 1-2 punch. What problems, what untreatable problems would you have were it not for this to begin with? That's what's known as it's the 1-2. That having the intellect is the thing in man, as opposed to the lower circuits, as opposed to the sex drive, as opposed to the need for food, sleep, and etc. That this is the thing that is the problem solver. But then, a real revolutionist, as many of you did even before I said it, almost made my day. That you realize, in a sense, what you refer to as problems, the kind that really plague you. Because the kind that plague you people is not going hungry. It's not that you don't have water, that you're having to battle somebody in an adjoining community over water rights. And it's not that you're doing without sex to the detriment of your health. That's not your problems. So what are your problems? Do any of you believe for a second, those that run along this far, that you've got any problem that would stand up I don't care how serious it seems. Family problem. Family problems with your mother, your father, your children, your husband, your wife. When I ask all you people to send in your greatest fears, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've gotten letters from the people out of town and the ones here. This is sort of an aside, but some of you might find this interesting. I was not prepared for it. I was kind of surprised. That's why I bring it up. Do you know what was a fairly common fear from people here and people out of town? New York, L.A., Miami. And many of them used the same term. I knew what they meant, even those that didn't use the exact term. But many people said they had a fear of becoming a bag lady. Some said a bag person. It wasn't all women. A little intended humor. A couple in one of the cities wrote me and said that they thought it over and decided that was their biggest fear, is becoming bag people out on the street. But then they decided at least if they'd stick together, they'd be baguettes. Back to the serious stuff. Those of you that went along this far, now don't just say, well, that sounds pretty good up till now, but you don't understand the problem. I'm asking you right now, what problem do you have that would stand up, that would survive? Now, I don't mean that you can't go back and think about it tomorrow, but that right now is still a problem if you don't think about it. Now, the lower circuitry, that's not true. Now, don't you see the difference? If you're hungry, and let's say that you had some kind of mental ability that you could make yourself think about things and not think about things, which, by the way, is not all that big a trick, but with most of you that sounds impossible. So that's why I said look at it as a trick or a magic, just pretend. You do realize this, don't you? You hear me, that if you were hungry, I'm talking about hungry, maybe you've been on a fast, maybe you just hadn't eaten it, you're actually hungry, to the point that, you're beginning, you can look at a picture of food and a little spit kind of flies out of your mouth, that kind of thing. You're hungry. All right, you can stop thinking about it, and that's not going to stop you from being hungry. You know that, don't you? Or if you're thirsty, and for some reason you quit thinking about being thirsty, somebody got you distracted, or you could just, all right, I'm going to stop thinking about it, I can't get in water right now. That will not stop you from being thirsty. The problem has not been cured, much less even treated. When you get into what seems to be the problems, discount food, water, sleep, your health, whether you're actually hurting right now, and sex, discount those. Set those aside. Any other problem, any problem that you can plug in that does not fit in one of those categories, do any of you believe, not me telling you outright yet, that if you could stop thinking about it, that the problem would scurry? All right, I ask you. Now I'll tell you. You wouldn't have the fucking problem. Is that weird? Those of you who can hear it for a second, notice that nobody suddenly has jumped up here in this room, and I doubt they will in other cities, other times, other places, and go, hallelujah, I've seen the light. That's it. That's what I came here for. I hear it. Thank you so much. See you around. Notice nobody did that. But I'm not just intending humor here, because from one view, there is a view that if someone was properly framed up, that is exactly what would happen. And that there would be potential people here and other times and other places getting this that would hear that. Maybe it'd take them 10 or 15 seconds to compute it all through, and they could squinch up their eyes without squinching up their eyes and go, God damn, and get up and leave and probably try to shake my hand or at least say all right to you someday, and that'd be it. No matter what you call a problem, if it's not one of the things I mentioned, which can be treated, they will treat themselves, the hunger, the sex, the thirst, and that is not any of you people's problem, is what we've really got to establish. Now, I don't care some of you people that say that you don't have a job paying as much money as you like and therefore you worry that you might go on the street. You ain't going on the street. Stop all that shit. You're just fooling yourself. What you're worried about is position in the pack. You're not worried about going hungry. You're not going to go hungry. You'd have to be purposefully dumb and stupid in this country in this day and time to actually go hungry. And if it came that bad and you were that bad off and still hanging around here, at least we wouldn't let you go hungry. So you're not going on the street as long as you keep hanging around here and I don't throw you out, you're not going to become a bag person. So that one's gone. So then we're down to every other problem you've got. As serious as they are. I know they're serious, but you've got to recognize this. The problems then lie up here. They are uniquely human. And to be uniquely human is just another way of saying that they reside uniquely in the upper circuits, not the lower circuits. And hence they are problems that only exist if they can be named, if they can be worded, if you can think about it. Conversely, if you can't think about it, it's no problem. It is not. It is like somebody saying to their mate, I can't go on like this. And the person goes, what? And they start describing the torment I've been going through, the great bouts of depression lately. And the person goes, geez, I wasn't aware of it. And they saying, and I attribute it to our relationship. I believe we're going to have to break up. I don't think I can stand it. And the other person just, they declare their complete ignorance to this. And they'll say such things as, well, I had no idea that you were having a problem. I had no idea that we were having a problem. Exactly. If you're not thinking about it, if you've never thought about it, it's no problem. It can't be. If it's above, if it's outside the lower circuit problems that we've already covered, if it's outside that, you have got to be able to think about it. That is, it's got to have names for it. You've got to be able to think in sentences about how such and such is a problem, how it's driving you crazy, how you're getting depressed, how you read an article on how certain stresses can cut your life down, and you start reading that, and you talk to yourself. You're in the partnership about, yes, this is what's happening to me because of this problem. If it's below the line, if it's the lower circuits, and you're just halfway sane, if you're just walking around bourgeoisie, those problems, as they're called, as I'm calling them, will treat themselves. You do not have to talk about it. You can talk about it. You can discuss food. You can discuss water. You can compliment somebody on the food that you bought or that they fixed you. You can thank somebody for giving you the water. You can do all that, but it is not necessary. It requires no thought. Thought does not precede hunger. Talking about thirst does not precede quenching it or having it. Of all the things that I could bring out as examples or ways of describing this, this is fairly clear-cut. It is almost a true dichotomy. Almost. Thought is not necessary to produce, to satisfy, to even enter into the problem of hunger, thirst, sleep, self-preservation in toto, sex. But conversely, there is almost, even in the 3D world, almost an absolute line that I can describe to you, that I am describing, that if it does not fall into those categories, you're dealing with an upper circuit problem. You're dealing with a, as they call them, correctly so without knowing it, a uniquely human problem. It's only humans who have such problems as interpersonal relationships, depression. That animals can have problems of hunger, but animals do not get depressed. Animals do not have interpersonal conflicts in their tribe, in their pack, between mates. You are now dealing with so-called problems that I start off asking you, and I'm suggesting, and now I'm telling you outright, that without the absolute continuing support of the upper circuits, not only would you not have the problem to start with, you would not be ordinarily uniquely human, but you could not persevere in the problem. it would simply go away. Go away. You can check this anytime. Anybody that can't hear that even for a split second, I got to suggest to you that you probably don't belong here. If you don't hear that just for a split second, I don't expect much more than that right now. But for a split second to hear that, yeah, that's true, Jesus. And then forget about it for the time being. But anytime you want to go back and verify this, it's going on continually. I don't care what the problem is. I don't care what the problem is. Did I say that? I don't care what the problem is. Here you are, you're sitting around, you're driving your car, you're doing whatever, and you're mulling on the problem. You're thinking about the problem, you're wrestling with the problem, whatever genteel terms you care to use. The thing is, it is in your upper circuits. It is a part of your consciousness just then. And if you fall back to city level, you can tell yourself, that is, you and the partnership, can assure one another, all right, I've got to think about it. I'm trying to work it out. But if you did not suffer from bad memory, then these plans that you and the partnership talk about, all right, I'm thinking about now about things that I will probably, that I'm considering doing, some changes I'm going to make, or even I'm sort of worrying about that I know I should do these changes and I hadn't, so the more I think about it, it's kind of going to encourage me and I'll begin to feel more and more guilty and I'll kind of steel myself and I'll do it. If you had any memory at all, you would realize that you have been thinking that same thing. This is not a psychological condemnation of man. It's not a psychological trick. This is a fact. And you got the library, you got the information, you got the machinery. All you got to do is look at it. You have thought this same thing day in and day out for as long as you can remember. You are not thinking anything new, and yet you and the partnership will say, I am. I am not. The problem's getting worse between me and my husband, me and my wife, me and whatever. And so I am thinking about it, but I'm not thinking about it the same way I did 3 years ago because it's not the same problem. But you will say that. You will say the things have changed. He was kind of sick then and would drive me crazy, but now he's taking up drinking. So it's not the same thing anymore. And it is what you call the problem is thinking about the problem. And of course, if I was dumb enough to get in a tree at the city limits and haul that into the city, and anybody heard me, they'd all holler, idiot, big brain. And all I got to do is check it. Call me a fig brain. All I got to do is tell them, all right, your problem, quit thinking about it. Quit thinking about it until I tell you to think about it. And I'm not going to do it long enough to hurt you, but all you people that accuse me of being some kind of, all you with your problems, quit thinking about it, and I'll tell you when. Now just quit. And so they all quit. Let's say they could do it, and I'll quit. Now say, hold on, there's a payoff, there's a prize. And so they all go, all right, we're not thinking about it. And then my devilish way, I go, ha-ha, it's a trick. Right now, right this second, before you think about it more, where's your problem? And everybody would have to go, if they could do this, they'd all go, gee, it went away. And then, of course, they would all come back to their senses and go, hey. I was just about to say I didn't necessarily intend for tonight to be all this humorous, but then I got to tell you that I never have any particular intentions when I start with, and I didn't want to say that because some of you might find that, what, disturbing, unusual, strange. But back to my original caveat tonight, as part of this laughter is that all of this is so true. But then if I say, well, send the tape and see you next time, then a lot of you feel good, it was a good laugh, and you made some notes. But what's going to happen? What's going to happen? I did not go through all this to talk about me getting up in a tree and hollering out to people in the city and them being able to see it for a second and then couldn't see it and everybody laughed. You know, we're not interested in all that. I'm not going out in the city and talk to people. I'm talking to you people here and in other places, just you handful of people. The thing is, you're sitting around by yourself and the problem is back. And you people, you believe that you sweat blood over your problem. Now, I've never laughed at anybody's problem directly. I know the basis of it. I can feel it. I know exactly what it is. It's not this a joke. But you can sit around by yourself, and any problem you got that is an upper circuit problem, now surely in the last 15 minutes we've established that. Just take it as I described it. You can't really argue with my descriptions that they're valid or they're usable until you see the validity completely. That everything that does not fit into what I've described as the lower circuit problems that treat themselves, if you're just halfway sane in the city sense, then everything else is an upper circuit problem. That is, you would not have the problem were you not human, and you would not be human did you not have an active upper circuits. The active upper circuits, the mind. And I may get around to throwing in some of what seems to be the blue circuits, but right now just look at it from the extreme ends. The older, nonverbal, and the younger, absolutely verbal. So every problem you've got that is yours and yours alone, that's your personal problem, you must see, just take my description, it's not going to hurt you, that right now it fits into the upper circuit. They cannot treat themselves. There seems to be no treatment. Anything that any of you have ever had as a human problem, as a personal problem, did any of them in any way ever lend themselves to the kind of treatment, the satisfying, almost immediate treatment, but at least a satisfying treatment, that when I'm hungry and eat, I get non-hungry and in fact feel better for the problem being gone. When I am thirsty, when I am sexually driven, and I can satisfy the problem, I can cure the problem, not only is the problem cured, but I feel better for it. Has there ever been any such occasion with personal problems? I'm not going to look at my watch and give you additional time because the answer is no. If you have to think about it, then God bless you. No. Now, of course, out in the city, they've got answers for that. Well, the basis of the problem is not in my conscious mind, for one thing. And so it takes time to bring this out. And I've got to go into analysis, and right now I can't afford it, which is another problem. And for those a little behind the time zone in which we're talking and living now, other people that still believe, well, my problems are brought on by me not living the correct religious life. And so I'm being dominated, I'm being tortured, I'm being problem-plagued by what they normally call it, lower forces, demons, Lucifer, the prince of darkness, all the great evil spirits, and they always live where? But anyway, that's just sort of an accident. I'm not going to repeat this but one more time because it's too potent, it's too dangerous, and it falls into the 4D reality of throwing pearls before swine. It's not that it's a waste of time, but it brings about a devaluation of the currency. I'm going to tell you, you can try it anytime you want, anytime, all by yourself. That whatever the problem is, your personal problem, do you realize you have got to think about it for the problem to exist? And those of you that begins to slap around without me being there, that begins to slap you around, that my God, I've lived 30 years, 40 years, and I couldn't see anything that simple. And then you wonder why I treat you people like fig heads. then you know how to treat yourself. I was going to say that there is another level I was not going into, but you could begin to slap yourself around about, is when you realize that every personal problem I've got must be thought about, or it simply goes away. And of course the partnership says, well, shit, that's nothing. You know, to say, well, if you don't think about something, all you're saying is, well, if you don't think about something, you don't think about something. Big deal. Of course, you got to do that when you get away from here, you realize. Those of you that belong here, I got this magical power over you already, that when you're here, I can make more sense in the partnership. Because then you know, on the way home, you kind of get your mind clear and you realize, well, hell, all he said was if you don't think about it, you won't think about it. Big deal. The other part that I was going to point out that some of you might get to is this. So perhaps I'll go into some other time, but if I just say it, some of you should be able to fly off with this. Is then you can have a question vis-a-vis the upper circuit problems, is this. Since if you don't think about the problem actually vanishes. It's not a problem. It's not like hunger. It's not like thirst. The problem is gone as long as you don't think about it. Now, some of you should be able to take a small rocket flight with this. Does that mean, or could that mean, or could you ask yourself this, let me put it this way, that there are two possibilities going on here. Two possibilities. One is, are they actually problems in something separate from me, which obviously seems to be true. Like my problem is my husband or my wife drinks and beats me up or whatever. That's the problem. Scratch the beat me up, because I don't get into you having to look after yourself. But your problem is that your husband or wife doesn't understand you, and they make you feel tense, and they make your life miserable. But scratch, I didn't mean to get in. That really starts getting closer to a lower circuit problem if somebody's physically mistreating you. So. But the problem is that someone is making me tense and making my life miserable. All right, if I don't think about it, and then the problem goes away, does that mean that as clear as it seemed to be to start with, that there is a problem? That there is a problem that you can put your hands on? You remember like the battery that didn't crank? But my husband and the way he treats me, or my wife and the way that she treats me, is a problem. It's something out here. That's why I'm trying to do all these hand gestures. But the other possibility is this, that not in this case, but in no case is there such a thing as an upper circuit problem. It's the only thinking about problems, and that's it. That there is actually no such creature, no such animal as a problem vis-a-vis the upper circuits. And yet that just flies in the face of the upper circuits, that there is a problem. You don't have to live with my husband. Wait a minute. Are they actually problems out here? This is what my gesture is trying to do, like a thing, like the battery. Remember the guy carrying the battery around, and they kept sending it to somebody else? The problem wasn't the battery. And the people that he was trying to talk to, the cashier, they didn't see the problem as being the battery. They saw the problem as being this guy hollering, "Hey, who did I see about this problem? I got a battery here, and goddamn it, I want some satisfaction." They go, "Oh, that ain't my job. Go see the assistant manager." And the guy leaves, and as far as they're concerned, the problem's gone. But their problem wasn't the battery. Their problem was this guy hollering. And he started off, his problem was, he thought, well, this person doesn't show any interest. When he started saying, "Oh, something done about this battery," and they go, "I can't do it, I can't do it." And he thinks, until you finally listen, they say, "Well, it's not my responsibility. You got to go see this guy." So then he fixes up the battery. But it's not the problem. He's wanting satisfaction. His problem is that it was errant expectations. All right, the battery, remember why I use that, may have seemed like a real hard and hardwired possibility, an example. But now somebody's treatment, my husband, my wife's treatment of me, makes me stressful, makes my life miserable. But if you don't think about it, and it's not a problem, then you're left, those of you that get good at this, with that kind of question. All right, if I don't think about it, the problem's gone. Now that's enough. But geez, that is weird. Does that mean that simply if I don't think about it and the problem goes, what does that say about the possibility of what the problem was in the beginning? is there actually, and under any circumstance in regard to the upper circuits, is there any such thing outside of me that is a problem? Not only me, but of course everybody. But I'm just seeing it. Is there such a thing as a problem? Or are all problems thinking about problems would be the correct term? If so, but I told you that. Don't tell me. The time would be right up on you. This is too good. I'm going to have to apparently shift the subject a little bit. I'm not going to stay on that. But the time would be upon you, for those of you that hear some of this, to begin to use the look around method internally. Not just walking in every new area and look around all the time. That is useful enough. That has a real purpose. And my guarantee with that still holds. But now you need, those of you that hear something and can remember this from tonight, you need to look around internally. Because there are no upper circuit problems, there are no personal problems that you have that will withstand simply looking around internally. They will not. They will not. I guarantee it. They will not. And you should be able to hear it. Then the question is, why I can't do it? Why can't I remember to do it? Because you can do it. It is a kind of a 4D expansion of Medivesco, of looking around as a constant examination of, what's going on here? And when you look around internally as to what's going on here, what you find out, there ain't nothing going on here. The only thing that ends up going on there is the thing looking around about what's going on here. Oh, I see. It's all quiet on the eastern, the western, the southern front, the northern front. Here are problems. Here are problems. All you got to do is look around internally. Even though I've already done it, and a lot of you heard something already. This whole, we're getting into areas, and this one tonight is a splendid example. It's really too weird for words. But it's not too weird, so I didn't finally come out and say, well, I'm going to tell you something really weird tonight, but first I got to go into a trance. I'm going to channel for Ronald Reagan. Or that I have to ring out crystals or throw cards. Or, what I told you was nothing. I just told you something that some of you saw that, Jesus, that's true. You can only see it for a second. It's like the whole weight of creation, of everything about man, is arranged in such a way that through the devilish tricks of somebody like me sometimes, the right people, you get a glimpse of something. Hey, that's true. Everything I call a problem is tied absolutely to my upper circuits. In other words, if I don't think about it, the problem is non-existent for the time being. It's like it went away, or I put it in a drawer, or it said, I got stuff around here for a minute, and it left. When I got all involved worrying about a new problem or something. Got in the middle of good sex or a good meal, and I had to finally get through and go, ugh. And then somebody said, yeah, you look like you feel good now, but what's that going to do about your husband? Oh, that. So then you're back to it. To realize that they vanish would apparently make a potential revolutionist continually use the look around method internally. But it appears to be, this is just several descriptions, not to be pessimistic, and this of course is not the true state of affairs of the real revolutionists, but it would appear once you hear something like this, and it just strikes you all over. There's no debate that strikes you, yeah, that is true, and the way you describe the way to operate against it, or in regard to it for the time being, I hear it, and it's just true. That's what I should do. Then why is it you can't? It is almost as though, if we were going to be religious, that the gods had made all of creation, put it in motion, and then you get a glimpse of some little something, just a glimpse of something, and try to make a move, and it's almost as though this big old foot, with the whole weight of creation, is like suddenly shifted and falls on top of you, and you're back to where you were. Or to put another way, you got a real bad memory. That, yeah, I can do this, and hell, I can't remember to. Or I could be, on the surface, for the sake of theatrics, I could apparently be cynical and sarcastic and say such things as, well, forget bad memory, it's just you people enjoy suffering. And you just won't give it up, which is not you or me. There's been people, life's had somebody hanging around saying that, all the way from Socrates to Abraham's half-brother. And of course, no need to tell you what they did to him. Oh, there is? Well, I don't want to go into it. Suffice it to say that you should be able to see that all upper circuit problems halt. They vanish if you stop thinking about them. Right then. And they stay vanished longer than a smart aleck Argentine who criticized the army. They will stay vanished as long as you don't think about them. So then the question is, well, if that be true, and I hear it, you're right. Why is it that I will go back thinking about it? Well, finally, you ask a good question. Now, I was being funny. That's not a good question. That's a Daffy Duck question. You tell me why. Why do you? And then I'll get a better question. Then how in the world can you ever face up to bringing back up the problem to me or to yourself or to anybody when you once realized, boy, this is a great problem. I mean, this is a problem. It's worried me. It drove my mother crazy. She used to sit around. She worried with me before she died, bless her heart. Everybody I talk to about my problem agrees it's a problem. I know people that have the same problem. We even started a similar problem club. We meet. But if I didn't have this problem, if I just quit thinking about it, didn't have it, oh, I don't know, things wouldn't, I don't know, I can't think about that. I just can't seem to think about that. It is too weird. Is that weird or not? I remind you, problems are misnamed. What you see as a problem is also only a partial reflection of what's going on in the Vetus Machina and the great living machinery of life itself, and you're only aware of a piece of it. But here is one place that you can affect through only having a piece of it. Is to not think about that which cannot treat itself. The body can treat itself, the lower circuits can treat itself, it can in a sense heal itself, and up here, this area cannot. It is not made to do that. It is the problem solver, but remember to ask yourself, all right, great problem solver, the problem I'm thinking about right now, would I even have it were it not for you to start with? And then think about the old 1-2, that life has done it again. That listen, there'd be no chance of you figuring your way out of this if I hadn't given you a mind. Ah, thank you, life. Thank you. Thank you. Say you while in line for the arbitrary, slaughterhouse. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. And then some smart aleck says, wait a minute. We wouldn't have the problems that this could solve, says life. We wouldn't even have the problems that this is in charge of solving if we didn't have this to start with. Now, you got to watch that, or the guy comes along and he starts picking out, well, you little pig, you got a line, you come with me. We got to. You don't have to wait in line. You come on. Get preferred treatment, somewhat like Abraham's half-brother that I don't go into. Since I was out here last week and I didn't use it, we were talking about names and words. And some of the newer people in other times and other places and still wonder what to call this. Since I used this term a few weeks back and got some laughs for you people. Then to stretch it a bit, I had to make an acronym, I had to split up one word. But Westy. Whatever the hell this is. It turned into a fairly decent acronym, except it sounds kind of wimpy. Westy. I mean, it doesn't sound like Islam. The chainsaw religion. That was a little humorous aside so here to let people catch their breath. And before my portion of the tape tonight runs out, I want to hit 2 or 3 little quick things that I'm getting questions from some of you newer people here and in other places. One is about energy. Here is a strange phenomenon for the 3D world. Little pieces of it keep popping up, but not in everyday life. It pops up in my lifetime, and I've read about long-distance runners, people doing this as not as a hobby, but as an idée fixe of these people. This become a whole religion, and you're familiar with them. But other than that, there is no common knowledge of this, and they don't really know what to make of it except those isolated circumstances that I was describing with those people. And that is this, though, that I was getting to. Some of you newer people hadn't heard it. If with certain people, all you got to do, I was going to say if you know how to do it, and I'm going to tell you how to do it, so it's no big trick, is you can produce energy, apparently new energy, by expending energy, such as, the way that all of you can test this, and some of you have probably stumbled on it and you didn't have any upper circuit description for it, but such as those of you who are out as your exercise that you're jogging or running, swimming. There should be something to start off with a lower circuit material example. And let's say that you've been running X miles a day, 3 miles a day, and you've been running at the same pace, and it's all you can do to finish up the 3 miles. You're always just completely worn out. You know exactly, you got it plotted out around your neighborhood, and you get to this greenhouse, and you know that all you got then is an 1/8 of a mile left, and you'll be at the corner, and it's just plod, and you just barely make it, and you still, for a while, maybe feel good. Well, hell, for years I couldn't do that, but now I can do that. It's like your 3 miles, that point comes, and all of your energy is depleted, that you could not run another step. Maybe 1 or 2, but it's literally this, as though the energy ran out right at the time. You can apparently produce more energy by increasing the energy output that you're doing then. That you get to the point that I'm especially tired. I'm always tired when I get to this point. This is about halfway. When I get to this corner, I know where it is. Increase the speed at which you're running. I don't care what speed you're normally running at. Increase it right then. And what you'll find is you apparently have more energy by expending energy. Now, I'm not going into a great description, which I've done in the past. Some of you can go back and find tapes and look into some of it. There is, as you would call it, a physiological basis for this. But there is more than that. There is also, I was going to point out to you people, it's probably of more immediate interest and perhaps assistance. It is the breaking of habit. It is the dipping into the what? The obviously irrelevant, because that is insane. You do not get new energy by expending energy. And yet try it. It works. I mean, it's not maybe. But I can start you out with this. That apparently, by breaking habit, by going against your established patterns, you have gotten access to some kind of parallel energy source. By doing the very thing that would seem to be, at the very least, irrelevant, if not insane. That is, I'm tired. I should be slowing down. Speed up, and you'll get untired. That is a simple fact. Check it tomorrow. Now, you do realize I didn't bring this up, I hope you do, simply to show you how you could run a little bit more. Go into the upper circuits and think about it. The very things that seem to wear you out in the upper circuits, and we'll include the blues, your feelings, but your problems, the way you're mistreated, the way that you're depressed, the way that you are frightened, the ways that you feel disappointed in life. You operate at a certain speed when you're having these feelings. The same way you do as you run. You jog with these feelings. You jog with the way in which you think about the feelings. You actually think about the way you feel that you feel. But you think about them and you feel them at a certain speed, in a certain habit pattern that is you. If you change it, if you go against it in any way, you get a surprise. You will have new energy. Many of you, the reason I brought it up in this way, that many of you continually, not just new people, people when they're first exposed to this and begin to hear some of it will say things like, well, I hear some of this and at times I am very enthused and it feels as though I'm making some kind of progress that's really meaningful. Now I go through periods that I seem to be almost sans energy. And how can I get it back? I need more energy. What can I do? I'm telling you what to do. Run faster. And you can't, of course, continue literally to run faster and faster and faster, but then you can run differently. Change the way you hold your arms. Run like this for a while. Run with your arms crossed. Run over your head and run. Put more emphasis on your left leg for a while until that becomes habit. And then you'll start getting tired again. Then throw your weight on your right leg. Then try to run real funny. Not through real red circuit neighborhoods, I suggest. But of course, if you get real good, I've only had one person, I never did tell him to do it, but I asked him one time, and knowing him, he probably went and tried it. I asked him, has he ever been out running and really felt good and flapped his arms when he ran? And I didn't press him for an answer, but he kind of gave me a look like, oh yeah. And I could see that the next day he had to go do it, but I didn't see him. Well, he wasn't in traction, so I guess he got by with it. Well, geez, my tape's already run out. Let me give a no, never mind. Too confusing tonight. So you people know they're getting the tape. Don't worry about the other side. We'll start with a paradigm, and I'll give. I had an excursion, but I didn't talk about what I was going to tie it to enough. So I'll pick this up 2 days from now. Count them. 2 nights from now, we'll pick this back up. Next time we meet, unless, of course, my personal problems just completely overwhelm me. God knows I don't really try to, burden you people with it. But since we got a couple of minutes left, I guess you noticed several nights lately I've been a little late, but I don't know.